Okay, let's go ahead and kick this off. So welcome. Good to see all of you on one of the waning nights of summer. So lovely to have you here. We're going to go ahead and just do just a quick round of introductions and just kind of a question of the meeting just to kind of get things started. So if you could go to the next slide, Brian. I guess we should do the agenda first. I was wanting to get to the icebreaker, but okay. So tonight we are going to just again welcome everyone, and hopefully we have some public members join us as well. My name is Marty Stockton, and I go by she/her pronouns, and I am the co-project manager of this project along with Brian Poole for 4 more days. And we'll be talking about that later on in the meeting. So we'll do some committee check-ins. We'll have some time for public comment if we have community members joining us tonight. As I mentioned, we're going to talk about some staff changes and some new roles on the project team. We're going to just review the final online open house survey results and summer engagement events, just to kind of wrap up a pretty significant chunk of work and just kind of wrap that up before we move forward. As I mentioned, we are going to be doing a transition to talking about the preferred scenario, and specifically it's the community development scenario, as well as the priority transportation solutions. And then we'll wrap up and just kind of talk about next steps specifically for this fall season on the project. Okay, next slide. So just to kick off, we'd love to do just a round of who's in the room tonight, as well as just, again, an icebreaker. So I'll just start off, and then Brian, if you wouldn't mind, kind of running down the list like you do for us, that'd be lovely. So again, Marty Stockton with Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. And the question we have tonight is for the upcoming Labor Day weekend. I can't believe it's this weekend, but do you have plans to travel or to stay at home? And my answer to that is our household prefers to stay at home on 3-day weekends. We like the quiet in the city, and we are having a luau block party. So that's how we're planning to celebrate the 3-day weekend. Okay.
Sounds fun. Well, I guess I'll go first. I'll go next, just so I don't forget to include myself. So I'm Brian Poole. I'm with the Portland Bureau of Transportation, for those who might be new. I am a transportation planner, and as Marty said, co-project manager for this plan. And I am also going to stay home. I just got back from San Diego this weekend, so I've kind of I did an early trip, I guess, or an end of summer trip. So I'm looking forward to being at home this next week and weekend, just relaxing. And I'll just say that, just to call out too, that we have a few new committee members. So as I call you, I'll try to sort of, tell the committee who the new members are, but if you wouldn't mind just sort of maybe saying a few for the new committee members, or maybe everyone too, if you just sort of maybe say your neighborhood as well, that might help people get oriented, and to those who might be meeting for the first time. So I will start with Anna. Can you go first?
Sure. My name is Anna Weichsel. I'm from the Woodstock Neighborhood Association, and I live on the border of Woodstock and Brentwood-Darlington. The Labor Day, I'm staying home. I have to work prepping for the next term teaching. And also we have the Movies in the Park event on Saturday evening. So if you feel like coming in the Woodstock Park, please come by. I will be there for sure.
Sounds fun. Hopefully it's cooler too.
Yeah.
Great. Ben, can you go next?
Yeah, I'm Ben Waterhouse. I have lived for 12 years next to Arleta Elementary, just recently moved to Montebello. And I will be staying in town Labor Day weekend. My brother's visiting from Seattle.
Great, thanks. I'm going to do the committee members first, and then I'll go back to other project staff. So next we have Bevan, who's a new committee member and a previous childhood friend and neighbor of mine. So I'm excited to welcome Bevan to the committee. Bevan, you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Hi, Brian. Thanks for the intro. Good to see you after so many years. Bevan Augustine. I live in Brentwood, Darlington. Been here about 5 years. Been living in Southeast Portland for the last 15. Really excited to be on the committee. Really excited about the work that's been happening and have been following it pretty closely. And glad to start participating in person. As for this weekend, my wife and I have a 3-month-old, and we're actually going to try to hit the road. We kind of have an annual tradition to go camping at a friend's house on the coast. We're going to do our best to make that happen this weekend. It'll be the little dude's first camping trip, so we'll see how it all goes. We're only planning one night just to be easy on all of us, but yeah, pretty excited to get out of town for the first time this summer.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Thanks, Bevan. Julie, can you go next?
Hello, I'm Julie. I live in Lentz. I've been here as a homeowner for 4 years, and I've grown up in Southeast Portland in various neighborhoods. So it's exciting to be a part of some change happening in this neighborhood. As far as weekend or Labor Day weekend, I'm just staying home. My partner and I are going to go camping the next weekend. She's leading a bike camping trip, so we're going to just take it easy for this weekend.
Yes, that sounds fun. Thanks, Julie. And next, we have another new committee member, Misa. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, my name is Misa. I also live in Brentwood, Darlington. I'm new, super excited about this project. I'm formerly part of the PAC committee for PBOT, and I started hearing about this project, and I've been here 14 years, super passionate about this neighborhood, and this project is amazing. So I'm just really pleased to be part of it. And for my Labor Day, it's weird because PBOT asked the same question, and I'm going to a little town called Baker City. I have a little house out there, and when I said that at the PBOT meeting, I found out Chris Warner, the director, his brother is the city planner of Baker City. So it was kind of a weird connection. So he grew up there, and it's a really great little town if you haven't been there. All right, that's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Misa. And I did not know, I knew about the childhood connection, but I didn't know he still had a connection there. So that's great. Thanks. Mike, can you go next?
Hey, my name is Michael Kennedy, pronouns he, him. I live in the Mount Scott Arleta or Arleta. I don't ever know which is which. I live in that neighborhood. Also, the Sweet Wife Bakery in Baker City has the best chocolate chip cookies in the world. So Misa, I hope you get to check those out. For Labor Day weekend, I'm going camping down on the coast in the Siuslaw. So hope to have some nice coastal cool breeze.
Sounds fun. Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Mike. Nancy, can you go next?
Hi, everybody. She, her. I live in Brentwood, Darlington, and have been a home owner there for 33 years. And actually, I'll be staying home for the Labor Day weekend, but my daughters and my birthdays, one starts the state fair and the other ends the state fair. So we're meeting on Wednesday at the state fair. And that's one of our traditions to celebrate our birthdays. So it's great to be here this evening, and look forward to hearing what's going on.
Thanks, Nancy. That sounds fun. Nick, can you go next?
Hi, I'm Nick Sovey, he, him pronouns, and I live in Woodstock, and my day job is with Rose Community Development, a nonprofit that builds affordable housing in outer Southeast. And I'm staying home for Labor Day. We're going to be starting a house remodel, so we got to kind of get everything ship shape for that.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, it's a lot of work, fun and daunting at the same time. Cool. Thank you. Scott, can you go next?
Hi everyone, my name is Scott Goodman. I use he, they pronouns. I am new to the project advisory committee, but not new to the project because I was working with BPS, Bureau of Planning and Sustainability on it as a community service aide, but I now work for Echo Northwest. And I'm super excited about all things related to this project. And for Labor Day, my parents also live pretty close. Oh, I live in Brentwood, Darlington at like 50th and Duke. And my parents are pretty close by and I'm gonna go help them flip hot dogs for a Labor Day party.
It's fun. Yeah, thanks, Scott. We're excited that you can stay connected to the project. So good to see you. And then Tim, can you go next?
I'm Tim Williams. I use he, him pronouns. I live in Mount Scott, Arleta. And I suddenly feel like I should be camping, but instead my wife is going to go to a friend's birthday party in Olympia and I will have my kids this weekend by myself. So Anna, you may see us at that movie because I think it's Soul and they love Soul. So sounds like a good activity.
Well, good luck. Yeah. And then I'll go through, I think that's the committee members that I see, go through some of the project staff that's with us tonight. So first is Bill Cunningham.
Hello, everyone. Bill Cunningham, he, him. I'm with Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. I've been working on this project in a capacity related to land use, access to services, complete neighborhoods type topics. Great to be here. And on a personal note, the first 7 years I spent in Portland, I spent living in the Woodstock area and used to report to work at a home-based business in Brentwood, Darlington. So kind of goes back a little ways for me from a personal basis, but great to be working with you all.
Thanks, Bill. And then Barry, can you go next?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Barry Manning. He, him pronouns. I'm currently an interim supervising planner at Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, working with Marty, Bill, Kevin, and some others that you'll hear from in introductions tonight. So happy to be here. Labor Day, I'm actually in the middle of a vacation right now, joining you from the middle part of it. So Labor Day, I'm not sure. We'll see what happens next week. Last week was more programmed. This next coming week or this coming week, who knows? We'll see what happens.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thanks, Barry. Thanks for joining us from vacation. Cassie, can you go next?
Yeah, Cassie Ballou. I work for Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. I'm one of the planners on the urban design studio, and I've had a supporting role in this project, just trying to help with everything from visualizations to well, survey everything. And for Labor Day, I am also staying put. We are going to try and find a pool and hang out at some of the local water holes in the city and enjoy being in town. I think that was everything.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Cassie. And Hector, can you go next?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Hector Rodriguez Ruiz. My pronouns are he, him. I am with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability too, but I was involved with the project at a state level a couple months ago, and I am looking forward to stay in town. I'm gonna go to Rooster Rod and clean up before fall comes in. So yeah.
Yep. Nice. Thanks, Hector. Kevin, can you go next?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Kevin Bond. Pronouns he, him. I've been supporting the project off and on for since the beginning of this year. And Labor Day plans, for me, I'm heading out on Sunday out of town for approximately a month. The first part of which I'll be helping my dad get through a medical procedure that should be pretty routine and hopefully okay, doing some remote working. And then the second part of that, I'll be hopefully getting a new car and driving it back across country. So I'm taking some time off. So so that's kicking off this weekend. So
Great, thanks. And I just realized, Pam, I realized I skipped you. I'll do the other project staff and we'll come back to you. So apologies that things got all jumbled. But we got two more city staff here. So Laurel, can you go next?
Hi, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm Laurel Priest. I'm at PBOT and I'm new to the project. And I've been assisting with putting together the community engagement summary. And yeah, looking forward to digging in and chatting with you more about all the things Lower Southeast. And I use she, her pronouns, and for Labor Day, I am going down to the Bay Area to see my family. And then that's kicking off a longer 2-week kind of vacation where I'm going to get to go do some traveling. So that's it for me.
So, and then Shane.
Hey y'all, my name is Shane Valley with the Bureau of Transportation and helping Brian and Marty staff this project. And this Labor Day weekend, I am going up to the Seattle area to help my grandmother move. Yeah.
Sounds fun, hopefully. And yeah, sorry about that again, Pam, but Pam, can you go?
Yeah, no problem. Hi, everyone. I'm Pam Hodge, she, her pronouns. I live in Brentwood, Darlington, and I'm also on the Brentwood Darlington Neighborhood Association board. And for Labor Day weekend, we are staying home as well, but tomorrow we're heading off to the Hood Canal for a few days of R&R and hope to beat the crowd. So that's me.
Yeah. I think that's everyone, right? I don't speak up if I didn't get you. Great. Well, Marty, I will turn it back over to you, and I'll go ahead and share my screen again.
So, it's a little bit of a formality since I don't think we have any members of the public here tonight that aren't on the committee, but we do, especially for our new committee members, we do have time on our agenda. This is a public meeting. And so when we do have members of the public, this is an opportunity for them to, do any sharing with the committee members and with staff. And we usually allot about 5 minutes or so, although there's some flexibility there. But since we have no members of the public, we can move on. Okay, and then this is another thing that I would share, especially if we do have members of the public. But since we have some newer committee members, just to go over just very high level what the project goals are. They are to increase commercial opportunities in neighborhood serving businesses within the project area, increasing housing affordability and choices, expand active and green transportation access within the project area, improve public amenities accompanied by anti-displacement strategies. And then the last one is a little bit more of a process, a relationship-oriented goal, and that is to welcome collaboration for policy, technical expertise, and funding. And I would put that is within city staff, agency staff, and the public. That collaboration is hoping to cover all those different groups. Okay, next slide. Okay, well, as I had shared last week, I wanted to let folks know and just take some time to just to do some sharing that I've accepted a job at the Portland Parks and Recreation Bureau. And so I'm going to be transitioning over to Parks on September 15th. And I will say that this was a super, super hard decision for me. And also a very exciting, lots of mixed feelings. So it was hard in relationship to the amazing people I work with and the amazing projects I get to work on and just the value-driven work that BPS does. And I've been with BPS for 13 years. So I think that there's also this desire to just have some change and some new learning and new growth. And so I was very conflicted, I will say. But But on a higher level, I'm still with the city of Portland, and I still get to serve Portlanders, and I still get to be connected to the staff that I love here. And perhaps that there's some park related projects that I get to touch the lower Southeast project area in the future. So anyway, just wanted to let folks know that. And then I'm going to move on to the next slide, but I just wanted to see if Barry had anything he wanted to chime in or.
Sure, I can chime in for just a minute, Marty. If you're, I mean, first of all, we're really excited for Marty's new opportunity. So cheers to Marty, you know, and wishing her the best in the new role. So we've got a friend at Parks now, so that's great. And we're really sad to lose Marty. She's been a great BPS staffer for a long time, worked on, I mean, really soup to nuts projects. All you may all not know, but she's worked on everything from the Portland plan to the comp plan to 82nd Avenue barriers to development study, and you know, in addition to Lower Southeast, and what all, you know, the other project that's going on right now that she's working on, EV Code, work with PBOT. So she's really been doing a lot of different stuff, and we were going to miss her. So I just wanted to say that and acknowledge that Marty's valued and she'll be missed, but we will have a good friend in Parks. And the other reason I wanted to just say a couple words, I'm in this interim supervising planner role, and I'm familiar with some of you all. I've worked with some of you in other projects in East Portland and whatnot over the years, but want to say, thanks for your participation in this. But BPS will have continuity on the project. This Marty's departure doesn't mean that things are being put on hold or pausing in a dramatic way. A lot of you have been seeing Cassie over the months working on this project, so she'll be continuing on in her roles in this and assisting with it. And you've also probably seen and worked with Kevin over the several months. Kevin Bond, he's been working on the project, maybe behind the scenes, but also with you all. He'll be continuing to help support the project. And then Bill Cunningham, who you met earlier in the announcement, will be taking on more project management responsibilities kind of moving forward as the project moves into the fall. If you're not aware, there's a lot of moving parts at BPS right now. Marty's departure is one of them. We've got other things happening there. So our intention is to provide continuity on this, and Bill's been helping out. You know, he's wrapped up some other work in Park Rose, and he's assisting right now with West Portland Town Center. So we've got to kind of get through some of those hurdles, but we plan to have him taking a more active role in this project, probably starting in late September, probably more like October, more actively. But I wanted to let you all know that, you know, we'll continue to be here. You'll have a team. I'm here to kind of catch up and get up to speed. I'm going to go back on vacation, so I may not be here for the entire meeting, but I may duck out a little bit early and go to dinner, but it's good to see everybody. And that's all I wanted to say. Bill, do you want to just say hi and just take a minute, and then we'll turn it back over to Marty?
Sure, I'll say a few things. And feel free, Marty, or whoever's running the slides, to put up the new staff structure slide.
Sure. I'll do that.
But I definitely won't be coming into this project cold. I work closely with Marty on the growth scenarios, the alternative scenarios we've been discussing the last couple months. And you'd be surprised, or maybe not, the number of issues in common in Park Rose and the Brentwood Darlington area. So be coming back from a lot of experience and identifying solutions to the kind of issues you've been addressing here. How do you create a community that has better local access to services, and that's easier to get around with? And incidentally, I worked very closely with Brian Poole on Park Rose. So we've been basically a team for the last couple of years in a different capacity. So there'll be some shifting, but really a lot of continuity. I think really most of the project team is moving forward in place. So a lot of continuity there, but I'll turn things back to Marty, but I'm really looking forward to getting to know you all more. And I think the next steps are really going to involve a lot more getting into the details of what is the appropriate land use and zoning and specifics about anti-displacement measures. I'm looking forward to getting into the nitty gritty in a project that I've become fairly familiar with. So I'll turn things back over to Marty.
Yeah, and I just would also want to share that you know, the PBOT team is continuing on as well, and so there's a lot of continuity there. So we, you know, I in my processing of this decision, you know, making sure that this project was going to be very well cared for internally was critical for me, and I definitely feel that is the case both within BPS. I feel like we have the leadership support for this project moving forward. And I also feel that the PBOT staff, you know, will again continue to provide that continuity and that care to this project and to the community. So anyway, I think we've done enough talking on this topic, unless there's anything that committee members want to chime in before we move on.
And I just say thank you, Marty. I really appreciate your engagement and, you know, the ease of how you provide this kind of interfacing for outsiders to the city bureaus. That's really something I really value. And I don't know if you remember that, but years and years ago, when I first attended a Southeast Uplift meeting, before I know anything about neighborhood associations, you spoke there about a topic. And I had some questions about how policy making and codes are working and all these different things. And someone said, you should call Marty. And I did. And you took like 1.5 hours to explain everything to me. And I was so impressed and so thankful. And it's really something very, very valuable. And I'm sure you're going to keep doing that at Parks and Recs. And I hope our paths will cross anyhow in some way or another. And I also want to thank you for what you did for this project, because it was so easy to understand for me as an outsider what the complexities are. And I know that's a big, big work on probably all of you in that staff position. But yeah, thank you.
And just Anna, for continuity with your class this fall, I would strongly suggest you loop in Bill and Cassie. And Cassie, you will really enjoy working with. So
okay, I'm looking forward. I will reach out soon. Thank you.
Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and move on?
Thanks, Marty. And do you want me to take the lead on this?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I'll just again say thank you so much to Marty for everything she's done for not just this project, but Southeast Portland and the city as a whole. So we're glad that you're still staying with the city. I'm excited to work with you in Parks, and excited, yeah, that you all should feel very encouraged that there's a lot of city staff that is dedicated to this project, and also just both bureaus being excited about the work that we're doing and that's happening here. So, and you see the staff list that reflects that. So, yeah, thanks you all. So we shared a little bit of this last time, but if you remember a couple months ago, the results were preliminary. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time with this, but we do have some new members. So we'll just go through and talk about some of the highlights from our public survey. And this is the survey that we asked in with the open house that we had over the early part of the summer, and then we can get your thoughts or if you have any questions. But as I mentioned, sort of May through June, slipping into July, we had a open house and survey that was open. We got over 500 responses, and in addition to that survey, we did have some sort of other supplemental activities that we'll talk a little bit more about. But bike rides, presentations, walks. A lot of y'all participated in some of those. And then a focused non-English engagement with the Latino network. And so just giving some of the highlights of what we heard. And I'll just shout out to Laurel, who you met earlier on this call, who's been working on our project team, who did the fun, dirty grunt work of deciphering all the survey data and developing these graphics. So thanks, Laurel. But you can see that over 91% of respondents live or work in our project area. So we were really excited that that our focused engagement, did target people that live and work and play in the area. And I'm sort of lingering on the slide because there's a lot of information to digest. But you'll see that the yellow was ranked #1 on the left side, and then on the right side was either 1 or 2, just because of the way we asked the question. But on the land use priorities, this yellow shows sort of what the top priorities were. So most respondents wanted ranked #1 to add more commercial opportunities in the project area. And then the second sort of #1 choice was adding more affordable housing. Third #1 choice was expanding the types of housing. And then home-based businesses was the last #1 choice. And you can kind of see the inverse of that, where the rank #2 is sort of flows down, and then rank 3 and then 4th again. So you can see that really commercial opportunities and affordable housing were sort of up at the top. And then on the right side with the transportation priorities, we have pedestrian improvements was ranked most highly, sort of the first or second choice of the respondents. And then it drops off pretty significantly. So it's interesting that was a key sort of priority for the survey respondents. And then we have street improvements and bicycle and scooter improvements sort of tied for that next choice. And then transit improvements, lighting, and bus stops was the lowest choice. And again, similarly, sort of an inverse here, but surprisingly, sort of street improvements was dipped down as 5 or 6. So there was a little bit more of a either love it or don't think it's a priority with that priority. But yeah, so that's the sort of high level feedback we got. And then focusing more, this is more on the community development scenarios. And we'll do a little bit more of a refresh in a minute. But hopefully you sort of remember the scenario 1 was the do nothing, kind of let things happen as they are now, versus the #4, scenario 4, where it's the most level of sort of allowed investment and density in the area. And what we see is this is the one that would create burdens or negatively impact neighborhoods. So scenario 4, or I should say scenario 1 was what people felt like would create the most burdens or negatively impact the neighborhood. So essentially the do nothing scenario is the one that no one wants to see, which we're somewhat surprised by. And then scenario 2 was sort of scenario 2 and 3 were in that 61, we had respondents 48, and then scenario 4 actually was the second sort of most voted for choice. And the most appropriate development scenario was the inverse, where that higher sort of density development, the centers and corridors scenario had the most support. So, or they felt like it was the most appropriate development scenario. Yeah. Anything, Marty, do you want to add anything?
Sorry, this is Bevan Augustine.
Yeah.
Can we go back to the last slide? So just a question or a comment on the transportation priorities. Pedestrian improvements were #1, and then street improvements were #2, but it sounds like there was a bit of a drop off there. And I wonder if the reason for that was the sense that street improvements might increase traffic. And there's a lot of unpaved roads in the neighborhood. And I guess my question is, are you exploring sort of like some of those unpaved roads becoming like bike and pedestrian corridors, that are accessible for folks that might be in a wheelchair or pushing a stroller, but not open for car traffic? Because I feel like that might be the reason that there's such a big drop off. I think there's interest in improving those unpaved roads, but maybe not improving them so that traffic can flow. Just kind of curious.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And so I can't remember exactly the wording we had with that question. I have to go back and look at the survey in terms of whether this meant gravel street improvements, or like you're saying, it might have been some sort of different interpretations, again, based on how we worded that question. We did get asked a question sort of later on in the survey about the sort of paving gravel streets. And it wasn't as much of a priority as we thought it would be. So I would say for 5 or 6, 7 years ago, we were hearing a lot about the need for paving the gravel streets just because they were in such bad condition. We've been making improvements to that gravel street service and being able to maintain them a little bit better. I know they're still not great service in some places, but they're typically on a 3-year cycle now for maintenance. And so that is something we sort of asked about. But to your question about like the paving them just for sort of bike and pedestrian access, but not and ADA accessibility, but not car traffic. We did overlay in some places where we could have neighborhood greenways and where there's paved streets. We'll get into that a little bit more later on. But so we haven't kind of, I guess, gotten to the level of what that paving condition would look like, whether it would be more of a multi-use path. You know, it does get a little tricky though. We can do some alternative type of street design, so it's not a full build out of the street with sidewalks and everything. But you know, we do have to provide access for those residents. So it could be a narrower street. We've done some sort of alternative street designs, but again, we haven't quite got there yet. And maybe further on in the presentation, we'll show where we're thinking with that.
Cool. Yeah, just want to comment. That's a conversation I've had with a number of neighbors, and I think there's, if not confusion, just a lack of understanding of, you know, I think folks generally want those streets to be accessible, but they don't necessarily want that to mean a bunch of car traffic. And so that's just an area where I think deeper conversation and exploring all the options would be really interesting.
Yeah, no, that's a great comment. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and if anyone else has thoughts or comments, I can't really see the chat while I'm doing this, but so if there's questions or something that comes up in the chat, just feel free to flag it while I'm going through. It's probably easier that way than going back. And Marty or BPS team, did you have anything else you wanted to say about this? No? Okay. So going to the sort of important or major corridors to improve, this is just, we asked like on a broad level, and this is those busier streets. So we named sort of the busier, not the local streets, and listed these options out. And you can see that it's interesting that there's quite a bit of overlap over the community land use development scenarios we developed. So on 72nd Avenue, 52nd Avenue, those places where we are proposing having more of that growth happen, were the two corridors that people also wanted to see transportation improvements. And then Woodstock was a close third, and then a pretty significant dip to the other streets in the area. But I will say that we have a number of other streets that probably would have come up, Duke Street, Flavel Street, 82nd Avenue. We have other projects either funded or plans. A lot of you know about 82nd Avenue. So those weren't included in here just to kind of separate that out and force the choice here. And then on these sort of on those busier streets, like 72nd, 52nd, we asked to prioritize what you'd want to see on those. And again, the 1 through 3 choices are the yellow. So pedestrian crossings, safety to intersections were 1 and 2, close behind, reducing the higher ends vehicle speeding, and then going down, separating bike lanes, improving street pavement, lighting, bus service, parking, and then bus stops. And somewhat mainly same sort of the inverse with the 7 to 9 there. And then Again, we had some of these ranked choice or choosing along a spectrum questions, and one of them was whether we should concentrate crossings on these busier streets, on the streets that sort of illustrated the highest need. And so based on our quantitative safety analysis, seeing where crashes are happening, or spreading out those crossings sort of throughout the project area, so they're more spaced out, but sort of everyone gets one in the area. And you can see more people wanted to focus on those places with the highest need, but it was sort of split between the two groups. I'll do one more slide and then I'll pause and see if there's any questions about these. So for the local streets priorities, those are the non-busy streets, from many of the streets that you all live on. But in terms of priorities there, the 1 through 3 was somewhat a little bit more mixed, but slowing car traffic or car speeds and traffic calming was first, along with sidewalks on those streets. And then this does get sort of to those, what are we looking at there? Paving gravel streets, repaving or repairing streets was next. Then bike improvements and cut through traffic with lighting last. And the 4 to 6 though, and 7 to 9, you can see here was a little bit more mixed beyond among those answers. And then a question that we thought was pretty interesting was whether we should, and the way we sort of worded this was, should we add sidewalks on fewer streets, noting that they're more expensive to do sidewalks. So we'd have to really prioritize, be a little bit more focused on our prioritization. Or do we prioritize adding traffic calming? So make things like speed bumps, diversion and other types of traffic calming elements on more streets, but not adding sidewalks, essentially making it discouraging car traffic. And we had a little bit more, or I should say, quite a bit more support for that scenario rather than adding fewer sidewalks on fewer streets. So I'll take a second there in case there's a question. I think I maybe saw a hand raised.
One question that I have, I don't remember how the data was gathered. How location specific is it? Like, can we get down to the fine detail of saying that like people more west prefer this and people that are more east prefer something different? Do we have that level of honing in?
Laurel, I might, if you ask you for that, I think we have neighborhood specific data, right?
Yeah, we have most of the respondents did provide a neighborhood that they live in. And so we could look at that to see, if somebody like neighbors west of 52nd or east of 52nd, or, in Brentwood Darlington versus in Mount Scott Arleta prefer sidewalks or prefer traffic calming. And then we did ask a question about prioritizing paving of gravel streets. And then I think I didn't include it on the slide deck just because it was a lot of information. And the results on that were pretty mixed, but skewed towards it being a lower priority for paving. But we can look and see what people are, where people live who are saying that specifically, because I know there's a lot of cool placemaking and community space making happening on some of our gravel streets down there too.
Thanks, so. Yeah, and Scott, did you have any like sort of I don't know, thinking that we'd infer something from that sort of separation of neighborhoods? Or
yeah, I was just thinking some of the more amenities that are closer to Woodstock, if those neighbors have different feelings about the walkability and the bus access, and if that's where the majority of the survey results were coming from versus the more easterly neighbors that don't have as much access to the Woodstock commercial corridor.
Yeah,
just thinking about that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, maybe we can do like a quick analysis and see if anything interesting comes up there.
This is Bevan again. I'm sorry. I would like to just comment on the sort of sidewalks versus traffic calming question. That's another one that I've sort of had anecdotal conversations with neighbors who responded to the survey. And, it's one where I think there's a little bit of a question around time frame. So, if it's truly an either or, You know, a lot of folks were saying they would, you know, want to prioritize adding traffic calming if that could be applied to more streets than, you know, say adding sidewalks. But thinking about the longer term vision, like, you know, would traffic calming preclude the city from installing sidewalks down the road? Or would that just be like a first step to eventually creating a neighborhood where there might be sidewalks running around every street? So I think that's another nuance that's, I understand it's hard to convey in a survey like that, but a lot of folks were saying, you know, the ultimate goal would be, we'd love to have sidewalks in every single street. If we have to choose between one or the other in the short term, let's do traffic calming. But if the traffic calming means that we're not going to get sidewalks in the future, then maybe we want to hold out for sidewalks. So, you know, I don't know. Again, I just want to kind of add that comment there. Understanding that resources are limited, there's only so much we could do at this phase. The scope might not be to think 30, you know, 20, 30 years out. I don't know, but like just throwing that out there that while a lot of folks I think that I spoke to said that they prioritized traffic calming over sidewalks because they thought they wanted to see more improvements in a greater number of areas, they still ultimately hoped that we would get to a place where there are sidewalks essentially down almost every street.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you know, we did sort of, with the survey, we wanted to force force prioritization, but that doesn't necessarily, it doesn't preclude that sort of scenario playing out. And you know, we always sort of have to balance the reality of that it's really going to be expensive and costly and time intensive. And honestly, the city just, it's hard to have those resources right now to put sidewalks out, but yeah, but I do think it should be a goal, right? Like, and we shouldn't lose sight of that ultimate goal of having a really bikeable and walkable community. So hopefully you all can help us, you know, as we start developing these projects, start developing the plan, be able to articulate that and also advocate for it, right? When we are sort of taking this plan to council, going out, wanting to implement it. Yeah, I think that's a great vision to have, and also we can start to prioritize too, where those happen, how those happen around the community development scenario that we move forward with. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up, because it's not clear here. We do want to, it was forced the kind of challenging, that's what the survey is intended to do, but it's a good point. So I think we just have a few more. This one was focused more on the bike facilities. So again, we sort of asked those either or questions, but there was, when we asked about neighborhood greenways, that's on the right side here, prioritizing neighborhood greenways on local streets versus adding or improving the bike lanes on those busier streets. There was more support for neighborhood greenways on the local streets, still some support though for on the other side. And then of upgrading existing bike lanes, so that's, you know, 52nd Avenue or Duke Street, versus finding, you know, adding bike lanes on new streets. So for example, 72nd Avenue, a little bit more mixed. So there wasn't really there's more in the middle here, or either or. So yeah, that was interesting. And then with transit, we asked, the first question was providing continuous transit service, you know, along Woodstock there and not dipping down on Duke Street. So there was support for that, to provide service along Woodstock rather than going down to Duke. But there also was sort of interestingly more support for increasing the service, so the frequency of how many buses come, rather than adding new or revising the bus route. So there's a little bit of a dichotomy there. But again, we were just sort of asking these either or questions, and having people choose a spectrum. So those were the transit related questions we had. And then just I'll just call out again that we had other outreach events happening over the summer, where we had a lot of good conversations. First with Latino Network, so having some Spanish-speaking residents who have students in the area and who live in the area be able to express some concerns and what they want to see, and largely aligned, but you know, calling out for things that are related to this project. Some different, but wanting more crossings, also more access to parks, just feelings of general safety were things we heard there. We had
highlight something there,
yeah.
and it was something that was a bit of a surprise to me with just the feedback we received from the Latinx participants, and the thing that kept coming up for them was safe routes to school and not feeling like their children were safe getting to school with just the high level of encampments that are along the routes to school. And it was one of many streams of feedback that the mayor's office heard. And of course, I think if anyone is following the news, they will know that there was a mayor direction to address encampments along safe routes to school. So just on the project end, we did connect the Latino network participants to the PBOT Safe Routes to School program, so there could be a little bit more direct communication and tie between that feedback and the Safe Routes to School. I'm not saying it caused the mayor's response, but just know that that was something that the Latinx community was very concerned about, and you know, there was a city response to that. And I will also add too that the questions that we co-created with Latino Network were both ones that were questions that we asked earlier in the process, and also questions that we were asking right now with the survey. And so that there was a little bit of a blend. And so it wasn't apples to apples with the Latino Network kind of questions that were asked of the community members, but there was definitely a co-creation on what questions they felt were most important. And so just wanted to give a little bit more context on that, that particular engagement that we did. Okay.
Yeah, and just so in the interest of time, I'll just sort of quickly note that we did have a couple bike rides as well, had some good conversations about just overall riding conditions, but also some of that tension between gravel streets and connectivity and creating a good bike network. And then the walks were great for the most part, and had some good conversations with business owners. With Rose CDZ came out on the walk at 72nd, and yeah, and I don't know if anyone else has anything to share there, but we sort of, it helped to sort of fill out and I guess just sort of flesh out some of the survey results that we were getting as well. Mm-hmm. Tabling as well at Lentz Farmers Market, a few other events. So
yeah, and just to close this out, we felt very good about the 526 survey completed surveys that we achieved, but by no means does everyone in the community want to participate in a 20 to 50 minute survey. And so there has to be other channels of outreach. And so we just wanted to make sure that folks knew that we were, providing other opportunities to engage on the project.
So it's going to be kind of a quick transition now, but just in the interest of time, we have taken all that feedback and as I mentioned, Laurel's really helped us sort of decipher it and had allowed us to, as a project staff, come together, think about what we heard and start to move towards a priority or preferred scenario. So yeah, and then so Marty's going to sort of talk through that, and then I can jump in with the transportation projects. Marty, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, feel free to go to the next slide. Yeah. So we wanted to just kind of loop back with you all as far as, what we heard from the survey and the other forms of outreach, and where we're kind of landing as staff on transitioning the scenario, which again, there was the most support from the community for scenario 4, the centers and corridors, and moving that into kind of a preferred community development scenario. And so based on the feedback, some changes that we're making to the scenario 4 are to remove the Woodstock Center expansion on 52nd, just south of Woodstock. And the rationale for that is, number one, having a neighborhood center designation when there already is a proposed neighborhood corridor designation, which all of 52nd is. There's not a whole lot of difference. Actually, there's zero difference on the land use side. So it doesn't mean that we're taking anything away by doing this. The difference is on the transportation side. So whereas we're keeping a proposed neighborhood center expansion along 72nd from Foster down to Woodstock, and that is because when you have a neighborhood corridor within a neighborhood center, there are increased pedestrian crossing standards. And so there's more frequency in pedestrian crossings. I can't remember what the distance between crossings is. I'm sure PBOT staff can help with that. And the reason why it's important on 72nd is because we have so many community institutions. We have Mount Scott Park, we have the Mount Scott Community Center. There's a need for people to safely cross the street more frequently. So that is the rationale for why we're keeping the neighborhood center expansion on 72nd, but removing it on the northern portion of 52nd. There just isn't that. If there was a school or a park, we would keep it. Okay. So the next thing is we are shortening the, we had initially the proposed neighborhood center expansion go all the way down to Woodstock on 72nd and then continue on Woodstock all the way to 82nd. So it was kind of doing this L-shaped. We have shortened it to just keeping it right at 72nd and Woodstock, and you'll see that on the next slide. And then additionally, moving on to 72nd, another change is widening the width of the multi-dwelling land use. And so on the east side of 82nd, there is quite a bit of multi-dwelling land use already, zoning already, and it's actually pretty deep. It's in some places it's up to 2 blocks in depth. Whereas what we had proposed was just a half block. And we got some feedback that A, wasn't appropriate, that going to the full block was a better depth. And then conversely, it's okay to have multi-dwelling zoning, and specifically kind of a lower density multi-dwelling zoning across from single dwelling zoning. So like that would be on what, 71st. And that is because the front setbacks are the same between R5 and RM1 zones. There's the same front setbacks, and there's the same kind of landscape requirements and similar massing requirements. And so we felt that that was still compatible. And then the last thing is that we heard from the neighborhood walk a lot of feedback of really wanting to expand the commercial mixed use designation starting on 72nd and Flavel south. This going south, heading down past Grocery Outlet towards the Little League Park, that folks were really wanting to see more commercial opportunities there. And so that's something that staff are continuing to work on. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next slide, but if there's any questions, feel free to ask. So this is what it looks like. And so if you can toggle back and forth between the previous slide and this slide, and we will send out the PowerPoint presentation to you all, you can kind of see, you know, where we're at right now. So this is kind of where we're at. And this is, again, this is a concept map. So this is still very much a kind of a bubble diagram, kind of making sure that we have the values and the themes kind of in place conceptually. Okay, moving on to the next slide. And then this is the same draft preferred community development scenario. We took out the aerial, and so it just has a white background. It might be easier to read, it might be more difficult to read depending on your preference. And we just wanted to highlight that this is still a draft. There's still another round of public involvement that has to happen. We will be taking both this out, but also taking out a zoning, a more parcel specific map out the next time we come out to the public. And so there is still a lot of room for change. Think of this as maybe a 50% draft. So there's still a lot more discussion to be had. And I will also say that if we are to continue collectively to move forward with the proposed new neighborhood center at 72nd and Flavel, we need a better name for it. So just putting it out there. I have some thoughts, but maybe folks here want to think about what this place, what name represents this place. So I'll leave it at that. Okay.
Yeah, and just before I jump in, is there any questions or comments folks had about that? Yeah, Julie.
Oh, sorry. Was someone gonna go?
Yeah, I was curious about like in the blue along the 72nd, where it's gonna be like apartments or potentially apartments. Would there be any chance that some of those would have like retail along the bottom?
Yes. And this is an education thing, not only for the public, but also for my colleagues at BPS. So there's not everybody knows this, but when you have multi-dwelling zoning on a street that is a neighborhood corridor, properties have the ability to have up to 1,000 square feet of non-residential uses on their properties. That could be an office, it could be retail, it could be a very, very light manufacturing. So there is that flexibility. I will say that there needs to be a lot more kind of public conversation or public education about that. But yes, all of it has to be a neighborhood corridor designation, which we're proposing on both 52nd and 72nd. And it has to have multi-dwelling zoning to have that ability.
Cool, thanks.
Thanks, Julie. And Misa, I think you had a question, and then Mike next. Mike, back to you.
Oh yeah, it was more of a comment. I really appreciate just looking at the picture, because I mean, what I love about this project is, for once, Brentwood Darlington is the focus area. And sometimes I worry that other neighborhoods who have more engagement kind of will push for projects or get just more outreach. And so when I saw this, I was really pleased. So I was just always trying to remember that Brentwood Darlington should be one of the main focuses. So I was happy to see that. And I totally support the 72nd and Flavel.
Thank you. Hey, Mike.
Hey, thanks. This looks pretty great, and I'm really impressed with the level of density that could potentially come out of these types of changes. One thing we haven't discussed is how all of that can be negated by parking requirements. And is there any way that we can address getting rid of parking minimums in this area so that we don't have vast swaths of land dedicated to cars and storage of vehicles out here, and we can dedicate more land to housing and commercial properties?
I'm going to answer that question really quickly. The state has already made that decision for us. So and when I talk about the state, I'm talking about the Department of Land Conservation and Development. So in their, climate friendly and equitable rulemaking, they have mandated that cities and counties that have a certain population, which Portland does, has to do away with parking minimums. And so we will be working on a code project this next year to do just that.
And that doesn't mean that private developers don't, sometimes add parking to make for whatever reason, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a market choice. It's
Yeah.
no longer a regulatory requirement.
So that we have other hands raised, and I'm not sure who was first. So Anna, do you want to go next, and then Tim?
Yeah, and your comments were just perfect for that, the market choice. Where I wonder in this kind of, corridor where you say like, yeah, the ground level could be some business development. And so what I see here on Woodstock Boulevard is that a lot of smaller investors coming in are refusing to have that. Because they are afraid of all the hassle of dealing with, these leases for commercial spaces. So I was wondering, since we're already talking about education, about, it is possible to do so. That's one part, but the other part is I'm wondering if there are some programs, some funding, some help in some way for developers to make them feel comfortable to actually implement that. Because I think that's really vital for where we go in the future, for having these kind of, walkable neighborhoods and being responsible with our climate. So I wonder if there are any ideas around that in existence.
There is a regulatory tool, which is called the Center's Main Street Overlay, which we would have the ability to apply in the 72nd and Flavel, or even, maybe there's some applicability in the expansion of the Heart of Foster north there on 72nd, where there would be the requirement of non-residential as opposed to allowing it to be a decision. So there is that tool, but on the programmatic side, I feel like that's probably a bit more research that we need to do and touch base with our colleagues at Prosper Portland.
Great, yeah, thanks. So Tim, can you go next, and then Bevan after Tim?
Yeah, mine was actually kind of similar to that. It's kind of like if you build it, they will come kind of thing. And I don't know, when you make zoning changes like that, what sort of data is around the lag time of it actually getting used in the way that the zoning is meant to be. Because kind of like Anna was saying, if there aren't sort of incentives or encouragement for private development, the zoning changes don't really matter, right?
I feel like there's a lot that we could respond to that question. Yeah, and I think that we have market areas like, the changes along Division, which, depending on where you sit, are good or bad, or somewhere in between. Those happened in, kind of the early to mid early 2000s, and then the change happened in the 2006 to 2009 timeframe. So that was rapid. And that was maybe a little bit unprecedented for Portland. But we do have geographies that have had commercial mixed use type zoning for decades, and they have not had the change happen. So, some of it is market. So branding, or the acknowledgement or familiarity of a place with the development community, and some of it's financing. And there's probably a lot else to that. Your question deserves a more robust conversation for sure.
Well, I think what you're saying is that we need a really good jingle for the neighborhood, right? Is that the key? Some sort of good theme song, maybe?
It's all in the name. If you get a good name for that center, it's gonna just that's yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, thanks, Tim. Bevan, you want to go next, and then Scott?
Sure. Yeah. The conversation had actually spurred another question. So I've got two questions. I guess the first one, based on sort of the previous two comments, why not in these neighborhood corridors just include mixed use zoning? If apartments and townhouses allow up to 1,000 square feet of, say, non-residential use, why not just make it explicit? And, for both, 72nd and 52nd, go ahead and make that mixed use zoning, because it does sound like that's, based on the survey responses and the comments of the steering committee, the direction that a lot of folks would like to go. So that's one question. And then my second one was, there's, especially on 52nd, quite a bit of area that's not going to be like no zoning changes. And I'm just curious what those, I'm guessing a lot of that single family zoning, maybe not, but along 52nd, what will happen now that that's a neighborhood corridor designation? Will, even if the base zone doesn't change, will there be new development opportunities, or what does that look like? So.
Okay, so I guess your first question is actually a question that I think will also be good for the public, and that question is did we get it right? Do we have the right amount of commercial mixed use compared to multi-dwelling? So that will be a question as we move forward. I also want to share that, if you have commercial mixed use zoning, there is no density requirement. And so someone can redevelop a site with a single story commercial building, period. And so if there is also a desire, an equal desire to have housing, then the only way to get the housing as well is to have multi-dwelling zoning. So, it still pains me at the corner of 52nd and Woodstock on the northwest corner. We have a single story commercial building at that gateway corner, but that's one part. And then on the 52nd question, just because there's some gaps in there, it's just because I think that the zoning that is there is appropriate. So, there on 52nd, there is continuous, at least with the proposal, continuous either multi-dwelling zoning or commercial mixed use. There's no single dwelling zoning proposed along 52nd between Woodstock and Flavelle Drive. So hopefully, maybe it may help to just have the existing land use map, there's some layering to communicate that.
Yeah, and Marty, I was sort of related. I was wondering if you would want to just speak really quickly about sort of the connection that we're looking at 72nd and 82nd as well, and sort of the relationship there, which I think drives the 72nd land use.
Yeah, and I am also really sensitive on time and wanting to make sure we get to the PBOT slides. But I think that there is an unanswered question for the project team about how the new proposed neighborhood center, how it relates to 82nd and Flavelle. That is such an important intersection, and it's also is, it's a major connection to also the 92nd and Flavelle light rail. So I feel like there's unfinished business as far as a conversation around how this new neighborhood center, what the plan is, what the approach is for 82nd and Flavelle. And I hope that you as a committee will continue to ask that question. Scott.
Marty, that segues exactly into what I was going to mention with this is at the MAC stop at 92nd and Flavelle, I see no zoning proposed changes in that area, as if I want to make sure that the neighbors that are further to the east are getting as much attention as well. And that's speaking of transit-oriented development and a very important infrastructure piece. I see there's a circle on the map around that, but would be interested to continue talking about what the zoning changes can be, getting it to commercial or.
Well, and I think that is a really, really hard site. The 92nd and Flavelle station, you're right. Along 205, you've got Johnson Creek that bisects through that geography. So there's a lot of natural resource zoned land that we would not want intense development, frankly. And then we also have employment zoning, and that is maybe a conversation I'm going to punt for later this fall, and for Bill and the rest of the BP staff to continue talking about employment land and how that affects both 92nd and Flavel as well as 82nd and Flavel, because that's definitely an issue for sure.
I just want to add to it. Marty just said, we could talk many more hours about the specifics of zoning and what zone should be where and where the line should be. And we need more discussion on that. And it's definitely going to be fleshed out in the next phase of the discussion. So you might see this phase as more the concept level, high level view of how the neighborhood is going to grow, where are the key corridors, where's the neighborhood center going to be. But we're not yet at having all the details worked out. So we're definitely not going to end it at tonight. That's going to be a key conversation moving forward, getting into the details. So I'm glad people seem to be really primed for that conversation, because it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, and it's great, that there's so much excitement, both from the committee and also the public, about these changes and about the potential here. It's probably not the same everywhere in Portland. So yeah, we're excited to sort of pull these strings out and flesh it out a lot more. As Marty mentioned, in the interest of time, we've always been trying to be aggressive, I feel like, in sort of putting this land use and transportation things together. I think I'm going to propose, we were thinking of having a meeting in October and sort of taking a month off, but I might propose having a September meeting where we can focus more heavily on the transportation improvements. And if you're not interested, that's sort of, feel free to skip it. But yeah, we can then kind of delve more into the details. So I'll do a really quick overview, but more just to get to the next step slide, and then we can circle back. And so this is just going to give you a sort of teaser for the following month, and then we can circle back. So in that community open house, just to remind you, we had 3 categories, really 4, but major street improvements, the local street improvements, bike network improvements, and then the potential bus network redesign, which would be working on with TriMet. And so we've taken those, and we have what looks like maybe the same amount or similar amount of lines of map of sort of projects. But I will say we have refined these, and there's sort of more project specificity to them. And we really are sort of proposing these 13 potential neighborhood greenways, 15 corridor improvements, and 11 local street improvements. And once we get to this point, these start to begin the evolution towards, if you can imagine a line, with an actual budget affixed to them, with, we need a roundabout here, or, a sort of a stop sign here, like that's where we're sort of moving towards with these. So this is the next sort of step in that evolution. And we can, in that next meeting, I think, get more into those details about what those would look like. But this is a fleshed out version of that. So in terms of those neighborhood greenways, these are the potential neighborhood greenways that we've developed. And what we're hoping to get with you all and sort of other PBOT staff and other stakeholders is really narrowing these down, and then helping us move into a tiered approach of what should be the priorities. So again, those neighborhood greenways are the lower speed neighborhood streets where we do traffic calming, but they're really sort of focused on people walking and biking. Transportation priorities, what we're sort of calling these, for the corridors improvements. Again, there's probably too many here, so we again want to help refining on what are those sort of short-term, near-term improvements that we want to focus on. And then the local street improvements. And so these are both those areas, but then some corridors that we are sort of more streets that we want to focus on. So that's just a quick teaser about how we're sort of moving towards these. And I think it would be helpful to have a touch point next month with you all where we can talk about prioritization factors, show some cross sections. I have some here, but I'm just gonna, I don't want to, you know, tease you, but we can look at these next week or next month and really think about the trade-offs here and help you flesh out sort of some of the trade-offs with each of these cross sections. And then where we're really moving is having these list of priorities or projects like I just showed, and then we would move those into certain tiers. So what are those sort of tier 1 priority projects, and then the other projects, which ones maybe need to be dropped off completely, those types of things, or things we're missing, and then tie that to an actual funding strategy. So we're sort of starting that process of moving into where you can actually see a full project on a sheet with a dollar amount and a funding recommendation. So that's really quick. Sorry to sort of speed through that, but I do think it'll be helpful to sort of step back and have a full sort of dedicated meeting towards that next month. And then where we're moving with all of this is hoping to release in sort of the later fall timeframe a preferred framework report, which would have the community development scenario and our transportation priorities. For that, the transportation priorities and development scenario are probably not going to be much more detailed than what we just showed, but sort of moving in that evolutionary step. And then the community engagement report, which we were hoping to have to share with you all tonight, but we will be sharing out shortly sort of a more condensed memo with all the results from with even more results than we shared tonight. Again, we're working on a list of projects, and I'll share that. We can share more of the details of that list next month. Continuing to talk to TriMet about transit changes, and then we're working on anti-displacement strategies. There's a lot of action happening there right now. Is like maybe the most condensed way to say that, but we're working with a variety of different partners, internal EPS folks, PBOT, tied to 82nd Avenue, citywide strategies. There's just, we're trying to sort of find the right avenue of how this project fits into that broader work that's happening.
And just maybe a more direct way of saying that is we're city staff, you know, we're responsible for this project, and we are navigating larger, more political conversations with the community, and having the community really lead those anti-displacement strategies and how they want the city to engage with that. And then we're also in the middle of our own bureau leadership navigating what we're going to be directed to kind of move forward on. So we're watching all of this happening at the same time. We'll definitely want to make sure that we're connecting kind of what we're hearing, you know, to this project, and to kind of relay that back with you and have that conversation. But yeah, there's a lot happening right now in regards to anti-displacement.
Yeah, and I saw the comment in the chat. We will be sharing these slides as well, so any maps you'll be able to look through those and have a little bit with the transportation maps, especially since we didn't provide a ton of context. They'll be more of a teaser for what we follow up and share next month. So yeah, and then that'll sort of help us move into the development of the draft plan afterwards. So again, timeline, we're really right into that, starting to start, as you can see, getting to that prioritization phase, preferred scenario phase. And yeah, so we're hoping to sort of move these forward to the spring. So I'll stop sharing because this is not correct now. We will be hoping to have a sort of transportation focused meeting in September, is what I propose, and then we can come back if needed in October. Things are going to kind of be happening pretty quickly now, I think, for the next couple months. And so we might have a back-to-back and then maybe break for the winter after that.
And I think the main thing from the BPS perspective is that just a reminder that the Project Advisory Committee is a bit of our first sounding board, we do want you all to see kind of the first glimpse or the preview before we take it out to the broader public. And so just want to remind you that that is very much our intention moving forward, especially as we move into having that, prioritization of the transportation projects, as well as transitioning from a concept map to a land use map. So we definitely want you to see it first and get your feedback first.
Yeah, and it looks like in the chat there's support for September meetings, so that's great. So when we send out the slides, I'll probably send a doodle poll with a few dates, and we can get it on the calendars relatively quickly. So I know September things are starting to get busy. School tomorrow for some, so we really appreciate everyone taking the time tonight. So we have a few minutes. Any other questions or comments as we wrap up? Great. Well, yeah, I think.
Oh, really quickly.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put it in the chat, but I just wanted to make sure you all knew that we've updated the project website, and actually Kevin Bond here was instrumental in getting the web updates done. So thank you so much, Kevin. But we do have a list of all, oh, apologies. Try doing this. Okay. It's a list of the full membership of who is on the committee. It has all the prior meetings, and so especially for the new committee members, you can go back and you can see kind of the historical record of what has been shared and discussed with this committee. And it's definitely a page that you should bookmark. Just moving forward, it's hopefully a helpful tool to all of you. Thanks again, Kevin, for doing that.
I had a thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Pardon?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
I'm actually Kathy. I'm on somebody else's computer. I already emailed a long thing to Marty earlier about my feelings about the project, but if you're looking to take it out to the community, I don't imagine I'll be alone. I'm a homeowner on 72nd, and after every meeting, I have to say I feel a little bit like I've died a little bit because what's being described, I like some of the improvements. I'd say maybe 20%, but the other 80%, I just make me really sad. I don't really want 72nd to become a commercial corridor. I don't want to see the increased traffic. I'd rather see money spent, although I understand politically it can't really happen that way, on better streets, better lighting, sidewalks, rather than focusing on putting up larger buildings and more apartment complexes that they look really good for maybe the first year or two, and then they look like, expletive, and as somebody who drives by them all the time, it's not desirable. I'd rather see more focus on helping with the homeless situation and cleanup and traffic safety things. Like there was an accident on last week or so. We've had like light shows every night with accidents on 82nd. A bicyclist got clipped on 72nd the next night. And then the next week, there was somebody shot outside Flavel and just a couple blocks down from Flavel on 82nd. As a homeowner in the area, I would rather see, albeit that's different money sources, different pots of money, I'd rather see more focus on that myself and not so much spending money on these things that I really don't want to see. But anyway, that's all. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't get too caught up in a hip hip hooray when I'm guessing I'm not alone. That's all.
Thank you, Kathy. You are an important perspective for us to hear from. So thank you for raising your voice, sharing tonight. Okay, well, are we about ready to conclude tonight? So Brian's going to follow up or Brian and or Bill as far as communicating the next meeting in September, and then we'll go from there. Any other closing words, staff or committee members?
What was the name of the neighborhood before it was Brentwood Darlington? Seems like there was another name, but I can't think what it is. And I'm thinking that might be the name of that old neighborhood that you were talking about. But if I could remember it, anyway. So
Yes, I think it was Errol Heights.
That's right. Errol Heights. So I don't know if that would make sense to, to pull that out of the hat, and if that works in that space. So that's what I don't know. Anyway, just my last little comment.
Thank you, Nancy. Okay, well, I'm gonna, shall we stop recording and call it a night? Thank you so much for your time, engagement this evening. Really appreciate again, the energy and time that you give this project. So
Thanks, Marty.
Thanks, Marty.
again,
Good luck.
Marty. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Marty.
Thanks everyone, especially Marty, for everything you've done for the project.
Yeah, good luck, Marty. Have fun in the park.
Thanks, everyone.